All right, everyone. Well, welcome to the Generosity Workshop series. My name is Christy Mora, and I am on the team here at Generis, where every day we are inspired to help leaders like you move the needle on generosity. I'm going to go ahead and ask our hosts, Jeff and Dave, to go ahead and come on camera so I'm not just floating over here by myself. Thanks, guys. So today our workshop is focused on understanding gifts of cryptocurrency. I'm very grateful for this conversation because I am definitely among the many people who have a ton of just question marks when it comes to cryptocurrency. And as cryptocurrency continues to be normalized within our economy, church and organization leaders alike are beginning to ask questions about the implications on gifts and donations. Today we have Jeff Hensley, Senior Generosity Strategist at Generis, and as well as lead over Total Advancement Solutions team, which is the division of Generis that serves our faith-based nonprofits. And we also have Dave Lopez from my hometown of Miami. He is a generosity strategist here at Generis. So before I let them dive deep into cryptocurrency, I'm just going to go ahead and take care of some housekeeping. So this workshop is being recorded. So after the workshop, probably tomorrow, you'll receive a follow-up email from me, Christy, letting you know just how you can get connected to these great guys, and also with the recording of this webinar. So you can watch it again, share it with your friends. And after Jeff and Dave have wrapped up their presentation, we'll move into a Q&A session. So that means throughout the workshop, if you have questions, you're going to use the Q&A feature at the bottom of the screen to drop your questions in. Later during that time, Dave is going to go through them and do our very best to answer your questions. And the chat is available to introduce yourself. So go ahead, say hi, let us know where you're tuning in from. And that's it for me. I'm going to let you guys take it over from here.
Awesome, Christy. Thanks so much for that intro. I've never felt more important than I do in this moment. So, man, I don't know about you, Jeff. Hey, so thanks everybody for joining us as we jump into our conversation about crypto today. Jeff, here's what I want to do, man. I want to start and just raise the question, like, what in the world is cryptocurrency? Because first time I heard this a handful of years ago, the first thing that came to mind was like a coin, like Super Mario Brothers, or am I going to get a turtle and a free life? Like, how in the world, what is this thing called cryptocurrency? So help me out, man.
It's a great question. And I think we have a slide deck, right, Christy, that you'll put up. There we go. Yeah, what is cryptocurrency? Well, I want to use an analogy to make it pretty simple, but I'm going to date myself, I think, in using this analogy, because I'm going to talk about the old video arcade from the 1980s that I remember as a high school student going to. You go and you buy tokens, right? You buy those little round coins that you would then stick into the machines, and that would allow you to play the various games that you wanted to play. And so it was an asset. In this case, in cryptocurrency, it's a digital asset. It's not a physical thing like that token is, but it functions like a token. People assign a value to it. You buy it, say, if you want to invest in cryptocurrency, and it's a store of value. So every time you went to the arcade, if one token was a quarter, you'd buy 4 tokens. That was $1. That would get you so many plays on, Pac-Man. And it stored that value. I could take it with me. I didn't have to always use it that day. I could take it home with me, and I knew when I would go back to the arcade again, I could have it. So it transcends currencies that as we know them, like the U.S. dollar or the euro or any other kind, the peso from Mexico. It transcends that in that it can work across nationalities and work globally. And thus it's a medium of exchange. I can use cryptocurrency to buy a service or a product or pay for services that I've had in exchange for those coins, and they are transferred through what we call blockchain. And that's a decentralized system of computers that talk to one another, that work on exchanging those currencies and keeping a track of them, keeping a distributed ledger.
All right,
So
hold on one second,
all
Jeff.
right.
Hold on one second. So I need to come back to Earth for a second.
To
So
the
here's what I'm hearing.
arcade.
Yeah. So I'm hearing we've got these tokens that are available in a digital format, right? So it's not something, it's not like a piece of paper,
Right.
or it's not like my phone. It's like this digital thing that can be used to exchange, to buy, to sell, to trade. And the way that that's happening is through this thing called blockchain.
Correct.
Okay, so
And the
talk to me like I'm
blockchain,
6. I'm 6-year-old blockchain. Tell me.
right. The blockchain is simply a relationship between computers, between servers, between, computers talking to one another, and you do the exchange through that. So let's go back to arcade analogy. Say you went with your friend, and your friend says, hey, I'd love to play that game, but I don't have any money. And you give your friend the token. That's the exchange we're talking about. But imagine you and your friend are computers talking to one another. Now, the beauty of cryptocurrency, which wasn't the case, at least in my experience with the arcade, is that someone's keeping track of
Okay.
the exchange. And that's the distributed ledger. And that these computers are taking note of how the currency is exchanging through a decentralized system. So there's no regulation from, say, the US government that regulates its own currency, the Federal Reserve, for example. It's done through computer exchange. So that's what's scary to a lot of people about this is, well, who's in charge of this? And the cryptocurrency folks who invented this system say that's the whole point. We don't want someone in charge of it. We want a free and open system where we can exchange value regardless of nationality, regardless of currency that we use, regardless of language that we use, because we're all speaking the same language at the computer level, which is code. It's also extraordinarily strong in its security then, too.
All right, so tell me
Because
about that, because if it's going from one computer to the other, I mean, over the last couple of weeks, we've heard this group was hijacked, and then you've got cyber terrorists. Like, tell me about the
well,
strength of this thing.
sure. And again, we're fundraising consultants, aren't we, Dave? So we shouldn't be held to a standard of being experts in technology. But so I'm telling you basically everything I know about this and what I'm about to say. But this is the crypto part of cryptocurrency, right? It's heavily encrypted in such a way that it's impossible, because it's decentralized, for anyone to kind of break in and access these exchanges, or at least that's the idea, that's the theory. Where you see cryptocurrency in the news in terms of it being dangerous, in terms of, say, ransomware, et cetera, is that people are wanting it as the mode of currency in exchange for the ransom. So in a case of a ransomware attack, someone will attack a database, steal that person's data, and say, pay me in cryptocurrency. The ransomware people want to be paid in cryptocurrency because it's a safe transaction and it's decentralized, so it's hard to track. That's why they're using cryptocurrency as a way of funding some of their less than honorable activity. Nevertheless, the currency itself is quite resistant to any fraud or technical malfeasance, and that's what makes it really interesting to a lot of people today as we think more and more about the technological culture that we live in and the techno economy that we're in. Yeah. How do we exchange value within that?
Okay, so let me ask, because obviously any currency, right, can be used for good or bad. Exactly. That's true even in our current system. Like American legal tenders use good and bad. So, money is just a tool and it's used one way or the other. For us who don't know a ton about it, right? Like there's different types of crypto that's out there. Like, tell me, is it Super Mario coins? Like what's out there?
There is. On the next slide, I kind of talk a little bit about that. We've seen incredible growth in cryptocurrency. I mean, 20 years ago, we weren't talking about this at all, right? Bitcoin has only been around since 2009. So it's just merely 11 years old, and it's by far the largest and most well-known cryptocurrency. the idea of exchanging value through tokens has been around longer than Bitcoin, but this is a relatively new idea that we're still trying to wrap our minds around. There are probably in the neighborhood of 4,000 different cryptocurrencies out there.
Oh my
Bitcoin
gosh.
is by far the most known. If you had bought a coin in 2014, say 7 years ago, you would have paid $280 for it. That's what you would have paid the attendant at the arcade to get your token. Today, you'd be paying about a little over 35,000. That's what it came in yesterday. This morning, I looked at the markets, and it's a little bit under 35,000 today.
Wow.
It reached its peak of value, at least this year, on April the 13th in 2021, and it was almost $65,000 per coin. So you see the tremendous growth in the value of an asset like Bitcoin. But Bitcoin is only one of the 4,000 plus what we call altcoins out there. Ethereum, Litecoin, even the notorious Dogecoin, which was invented by folks kind of as a joke, has now got a market cap of over $44 billion.
Oh my goodness.
So that's a large joke today, isn't it?
You know, I have a buddy, hold on. I had a buddy who bought some Dogecoin, just kind of messing around. And he was on Facebook just blasting like, my investments, you know, up 5,000%. I mean, he put like 10 bucks in and he made it like a couple $100. It was crazy.
Yeah. Well, you know, we also should say that, you know, while we're not technologists, we're also not investment advisors, right? And so we're not necessarily recommending that you invest in cryptocurrency, although you certainly could, and you could make a substantial amount of money. But like in March of 2020, when the height of the pandemic really hit the world, cryptocurrency, particularly Bitcoin, lost half of its value in 2 days alone.
Wow.
So the volatility is tremendous. So that with the increased risk, obviously increases the reward, but it's increasingly being accepted by the financial industry. You know, 5 years ago, especially 7 years ago in 2014, people weren't really thinking that this was a serious way of exchanging value and of doing an economy. And today, I think it's fairly clear that most people believe it is and will only continue to grow. There are a number of exchange traded funds, ETFs, that are now investing exclusively in cryptocurrency and tracking the cryptocurrency market. Companies are investing in it. Obviously, the most famous one would be Elon Musk and Tesla buying, you know, $1.5 billion of cryptocurrency as part of their investment portfolio. And it's increasingly becoming an option for payment. You can buy a Tesla, I believe, with Bitcoin now. I was at a restaurant 2 weeks ago that accepted cryptocurrency as form of payment for a meal. So as the acceptance of this currency increases, the use of it will increase. The latest data that I was able to find from about 2 months ago suggests that 14% of US citizens own cryptocurrency, and it represents today roughly $713 billion in market cap. So if you're thinking about your church and your demographics of your church, particularly the younger people in your church, particularly if you have a church that's in a tech hub, Austin, Texas, Miami, my own area of the Research Triangle here in Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina, obviously Silicon Valley, elsewhere, there's most likely members of your congregation that are currently own and are trading cryptocurrency.
Jeff, I just want to make sure that I'm hearing this right. When I see that data that says 14%, that means 14 people out of every 100 in this country is messing around with some form of crypto. Is that right?
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay, so I mean, that's got massive implications for like the people who come to church, the people who are gonna come to church one day, the people who are growing up like my kids, your kids, who they may not know what a debit card is one day because they're possibly dealing in just crypto. Okay, so it sounds like crypto, you know, it's been around, people had questions. Is it legit? It sounds like it's not only legit, but it's here to stay, and it's only going to pick up growth, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so if that's the case, then help me understand, like, how does cryptocurrency work? And by the way, for everybody who's watching right now, I just want to remind you, there is like a little tab towards the bottom of the screen that says Q&A. As we're progressing in the conversation, if any of you out there have questions, make sure that the questions pop up, because I want to figure out how to either interweave them or make sure that we have those questions answered before our time is done. So Jeff, help me understand, man, how does this thing work?
So if someone were to give you some cryptocurrency as a donation at your church or at your faith-based nonprofit, you need to treat it like an appreciated asset, similar to a stock transaction, or if someone gave you a gift of property. In fact, in 2014, that was kind of the year everyone thought, well, we probably better start paying attention to this. The IRS got involved and they deemed it a piece of property.
Okay.
So it's not like a cash currency for the IRS. You know, when you give cash to an organization, you get a receipt, but there's no appreciation associated with it, right? A dollar is a dollar. It's always a dollar.
Right.
It might be able to buy you more at some point in your life than it does now. But when you give a dollar, you get a dollar credit. With cryptocurrency, it's more complex because it's considered an item of property or an asset, like an equity, a stock. So you have to treat it as a donation in a similar way to you treating a stock donation. So when someone gives you, say, 1 Bitcoin, the way you acknowledge that gift is you say, thank you, Dave, for your gift of 1 Bitcoin to First Elsewhere Baptist Church. And you give the date that the gift was given, and you do the other acknowledgement and thanking activities that you do in any gift letter. It's not your responsibility for determining the value of the gift of Bitcoin.
Okay.
And here's why. It's a really complicated method of appraising that value. Unlike a stock gift where, you know, if you gave 100 shares of a particular stock, you could go to the stock exchange that the stock is traded on, say it's the Dow, the New York Stock Exchange, and you could say, well, on that day, the stock was valued at X amount, and so that's basically the value of the stock. Now, again, even with stock transactions, churches shouldn't be telling the donor how much those transactions were. So if you gave me our church 100 shares of Apple stock, you still acknowledge it as 100 shares of Apple stock. But the individual can determine the value based on what the fair market value was of the stock at that given day of gift. With cryptocurrency, there are 500 plus exchanges out there, and currencies are traded on every one of those exchanges. So it's extremely difficult to appraise the value of the gift. Accountants do it. They pick an exchange, they pick the date the gift was given, and they make the valuation, but it's not your responsibility as a charity to do that. If the gift is guesstimated to be valued over $5,000, you are obligated to tell the donor that he or she needs to fill out a form 8283 for the gift in order to receive the benefit from the IRS as a tax donation. So in the same way you would do a stock gift, you would notify the donor of that as well. But it's not your responsibility to determine the value of the gift because it's very complicated. Let them and their accountant do that.
Yeah. So if I'm an executive pastor at a church, or if I'm senior pastor and someone says, hey, you know, how do I give crypto to the church or to the university or the ministry or whatever?
Right.
If I'm hearing it right, you say, don't thanks for X amount of dollars. You say, thanks for X amount of crypto.
That's right.
We appreciate your gift of 6 Bitcoins. May the Lord bless and keep it, right?
That's right.
And then I've got to treat it as if it was stock. So I'm going to connect with our financial leadership or our accountants or whoever's helping to make the translation of crypto into dollar or whatever that's going to be. And if it ends up being over 5K, I just want to make sure I got this right. I got to let the donor know to fill out form 8283 in order to be able to receive that tax, either credit or write-off or whatever. because the translation from Bitcoin or from crypto into dollar was over 5K. Is that right?
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay, so let me ask this, because there's different questions, and Jeff, I don't know if you're gonna know all this. You mentioned there's like tons of different types of variations of crypto. Are they interchangeable? Like, can I trade one for the other? Like, hey, I'm gonna go to Arcade A and trade in my tokens from Arcade A to Arcade X. Can I do those kinds of things, or is it, man, you got to strictly stick with one type of crypto?
Cryptocurrencies can be exchanged similar to the way we buy currency regularly. You know, I can go down to the bank and buy X number of Mexican pesos if I want to have pesos. So yeah, you can buy from one cryptocurrency to another, but you do it through a wallet. And that's a really important thing to talk about, is that anyone who owns cryptocurrency is going to store it in what they call a wallet. And that wallet basically, yes, exactly, but not a physical wallet, one that's monitored by an exchange site like Coinbase, which is one of the most popular ones. You might have heard about it recently. They just recently went public as a publicly traded company. But what Coinbase will do is they'll have your wallet, and you'll have in your wallet the various cryptocurrencies that you own, just like a wallet where you open it up and you say, oh, I have $20, I have 5 pesos, I have 100 euros. That's very similar to an electronic wallet that you store cryptocurrency in. When you make an exchange of cryptocurrency, though, you use one or more of those currencies. Okay. And the value then is determined based on the value of the currency. So Bitcoin has a very different value than Ethereum or Litecoin or Dogecoin. And so you direct the platform, Coinbase, to make the trade and the exchange based on what you want to trade. The dilemma for nonprofits and churches has always been, how do we receive these gifts then? Because we don't have a wallet, or most churches don't have a wallet.
So how do I get a wallet, Jeff?
That's
because
right.
If not, like I've got these awesome tokens that I can't play anywhere, right?
Exactly. And that was a big problem for us, I would say, about a year to a year and a half ago. And what I would do with a lot of our clients at Generis is I would walk them through the very difficult process of opening a wallet as a nonprofit at Coinbase or at another platform. There was a lot of red tape to go through, because Coinbase and these other platforms are well designed to accommodate people, but they're not as easily designed to accommodate institutions. So what happened is that these organizations would go through and create wallets, and eventually many of them did. And so I know some churches and some nonprofit organizations that now have cryptocurrency wallets, and they can receive donations that way. The good news, starting in about November of last year, is that because of the wider acceptance of the legitimacy of cryptocurrency, a lot of our pay platforms that we use to receive general donations from credit cards, et cetera, are now taking cryptocurrency gifts. The first one to make that move was PayPal in November of last year. And after PayPal did it, others have followed. So if you use PayPal as your merchant service provider to accommodate your online giving, your credit card transactions, et cetera, they will take gifts of cryptocurrency. So one solution of how you can receive this gift is you can just tell your giver, go online, go to PayPal, make the gift to us through PayPal if you have a PayPal account, and if we can accept PayPal transactions. What PayPal will do is they'll take the cryptocurrency, they'll convert it into cash, into US dollars, and then they will send you the amount that it amounts to. The unfortunate thing is PayPal has to make money, so they're going to take probably 3 to 5% of that transaction. A better way to do it, I think now.
So I was going to ask, I was like, well, I don't like giving money away. So how do I get my own digital wallet? Like, is that the answer?
I don't think so. I think that's still very difficult to do. Maybe in a year or two, when things open up and when it becomes even more accepted it will be easier for nonprofits and churches to get their own wallet. But my current recommendation of the easiest way to do it is to encourage your donor, your giver who's giving cryptocurrency, to open a donor advised fund. Many of them probably already have a DAF. And we could spend a whole nother webinar on donor advised funds and how important they are now to giving, not only for nonprofits, but also I think for churches.
Hey, Jeff, really quick, donor advice fund, 30 seconds.
Sure. A donor advised fund is set up typically with an organization like Fidelity Charitable or Vanguard or Schwab. Any of these investments houses have created their own 501c3s to accommodate this. You set up a fund, you give your donation, you get your tax benefit in the gift that you give to that organization. So say you want to set up a donor advised fund at Fidelity, you send them a check for $5,000, you set up your DAF, and then you advise them on how you want to give it to charities.
Now that's the individual donor, right? We're not talking about churches or universities. Like if Dave Lopez wants to set up, it's not like I would do it, not my church.
Exactly. So you set up the donor advised fund. You can direct Fidelity or whomever you set it up with to send donations to the charities of your choice. They follow your advice and they send that donation out. What's interesting is that now DAFs accept cryptocurrency. So what you can do is you can talk to your donor. Well, do you have a DAF? And they typically will say, yeah, I have set one up before. I don't use it a lot, but it's there. What we would encourage you to do is give your cryptocurrency gift to fund your DAF. And in funding your DAF, then you can direct the DAF manager, like Fidelity, to give that gift to the charity of your choice, which would in this case be the church or the nonprofit. 95% of all crypto gifts today are given to DAFs. And it's the overwhelming way that we're accommodating cryptocurrency gifts right now. And the beauty of it is the donor gives it to Fidelity. Fidelity converts it into cash in the funding of the DAF. And then Fidelity sends it to the church or the nonprofit, but there's no fees to the church or nonprofit. They get every bit of the money because Fidelity doesn't charge the church for that transaction. They charge the owner of the DAF probably about 1% a year as they invest those funds and as those funds grow.
All right, so I just want to kind of recap before we jump into whatever's coming next.
Sure.
A church or a nonprofit could set up their own digital wallet to receive crypto, but it's a nightmare. It's super complicated. The paperwork.
Currently it's tough.
Yeah, today, as of June 30th, right? 2021, right. Very challenging. So option one, option two, there's a couple of ways around it. First would be to go to a place like Coinbase or a few other places. And if I'm getting it right, you can have them do the exchange from crypto into dollars or whatever, and then have the monies be given to the entity, the church, the university.
That would be the DAF.
The DAF.
Yeah, right. Not Coinbase. Coinbase is the one that's going to be able to do the exchange of cryptocurrency, even in an economy and in like a exchange of services, et cetera. They're the ones that hold the wallet. It's Fidelity, it's Vanguard, it's organizations that administer DAFs for donors. Yeah.
So that's the cleanest way, the easiest
that's the cleanest way. Yeah.
So for all of our churches out there, it's like, hey, we'd have to have a conversation with our donor base about maybe talking to Fidelity, Schwab. If your denomination has a foundation, they could probably set up a DAF or something like that.
Correct.
To receive that, the person giving the crypto is the one who pays the fee to whoever's making the exchange, at which point the church then receives the full transaction from crypto into dollar or whatever currency. No penalties incurred, no paperwork or nightmares to have to deal with. Is that right?
Correct.
Absolutely. Okay, I feel smarter right now, Jeff. Thanks for clarifying, man. A ton. So let me ask you this.
And if you don't want to do that, you can always say use PayPal and just eat the service fee.
Got it. Okay. Let me ask this, because one of the questions that popped up is, in order to give crypto or to even trade, do I have to have like a whole coin, or can I give or trade bits and pieces of it?
You can trade fractional coins. And in fact, now that crypto is so valuable, like a Bitcoin, most people, if they're in the market of Bitcoins, probably don't even own a full Bitcoin. If they did, they'd have at least $35,000 right now sitting
Wow.
in their account. So yeah, $5,000 gift of a Bitcoin would be 1/7 of a coin, and that's fine.
Okay.
And the system is based and is able to accommodate that.
Okay, then let me ask you, because as we talk about converting then things from crypto into dollars or whatever, Coinbase is one of those types of conversion type companies. There's a few others, like Given is one of the ones that they've raised
That's
questions.
right.
Like, any thoughts on those types of groups? Is there,
Yeah.
obviously you're not paid by anybody to endorse anything.
No.
So what are your thoughts on that?
No, I think there are a number of groups out there right now, and they're only going to grow because this is a growing industry. I would just encourage churches and nonprofits to do their due diligence and try them out. One of the ones that I've recommended people to use is called the Giving Block. And what the Giving Block does is that they will help you not only accommodate gifts of cryptocurrency, but they will also help you market to your audience. So if you're a nonprofit, have a donor base, they will help you market that option to your donors. In church cases, they will help you market to your congregation how best to give gifts of cryptocurrency, how to lower the bar of lack of knowledge, or some form of information block, that someone would have about, well, I'm not sure I could give this kind of gift. And Giving Block would help work with the giver on how to facilitate that. They claim in their marketing material that when someone signs up with them, and of course you pay a fee for that service and their marketing service, they can increase year over year giving through cryptocurrency by at least $30,000. So they do claim to have great success. And in my experience, these kinds of services, Giving Block and others that you've mentioned, are successful in the work they do. I mean, you think about it, someone in your congregation 6 years ago bought a Bitcoin for $300. Now you're doing a capital campaign in your church, and you're wanting 4-5-figure gifts from most of your congregation. And this person's thinking, well, how can I do that kind of gift? And they look at their cryptocurrency value and they see that, what they spent $500 on now is worth $35,000.
Yeah.
If they exchange that at any point for cash, they're going to have to pay, taxes on that, just like they would for any appreciated asset like a stock. So it's a wonderful opportunity for them to give a very meaningful and powerful gift to your campaign and avoid the capital gains tax on the appreciated value of that asset.
Okay.
And so it's an amazing way, I think, to engage younger givers, particularly, who might have had this as kind of a fun way of investing 5 or 6 years ago, and now see that their wallet is worth $300,000-400,000.
Okay.
They can really make a difference in a campaign if they're given the option of giving through cryptocurrency. But some of them don't even think about it. They don't immediately translate cryptocurrency to the church.
Yeah, listen, so as a pastor at a church, I'll tell you, I have the opportunity to do the offering moment at my church really often. And I mean, because of COVID, forget the plate. So everything's like, hey, if you text to give online, or if you're going to give in person, there's a bucket in the back or something. But I am yet to say, by the way, if any of you are interested in dropping any crypto, come on down. So I think that's a really good word. This idea of, kind of elevating it and just making it as an option. Jeff, I know you mentioned giving to campaigns and being able to receive them, PayPal is an option, a DAF being an option. I did want to shift into, what if we have folks within the congregation that are doing, planning for end of life stuff, wills and those kinds of things, or planned giving. Like, can we incorporate crypto into that kind of a conversation?
Absolutely. And there's some, I outline on the next slide some best practices around that. So if you ever get a gift of cryptocurrency, whether it be an outright gift or a gift in an estate, I would strongly recommend that you liquidate it immediately, however, whatever platform you're using. And in some cases, you'll get the cash right away anyway, if you get it through PayPal or through a DAF. But it's like SOC. You shouldn't be holding on to it because of its high volatility. You want to be able to use the resources that the donor intended for you to have immediately and for the purposes of advancing the kingdom. So I would recommend that you liquidate it immediately. You acknowledge the gift when you receive it, like we talked about. And then here, to your point, Dave, what about a bequest? And this is the kind of growing edge of philanthropy right now. We're starting to get more comfortable with donations of cryptocurrency, but how do we understand cryptocurrency in an estate plan? Because someday all of us are going to die. And those of us who own cryptocurrency, what's going to happen to it? It's an asset like an equity, like a house, like a car. And we need to have some role for it in our estate plan. So I think churches can take a leading role in this effort as they talk to their congregation about their end of life plans, to raise the question of, if you have cryptocurrency, think responsibly about how you want to care for it. In the early days of cryptocurrency, which we're talking maybe 5 years ago, there was a famous case of an early adopter of cryptocurrency who died. His cryptocurrency was embedded in his computer, right? It's a computer stored exchange, but nobody had the password to his wallet. And so that money, that currency is lost. There's no way to access it. A recent study by Coinbase has suggested that 20% of all cryptocurrency has been lost because people threw out hard drives and forgot to transfer the currency from the hard drive. So increasingly, I think we're going to need to talk to our donors, our givers, particularly ones that have invested in cryptocurrency as they near the end of their lives, about what's responsible ways of caring for this currency, making sure that a loved one has all the access that they need to get to a wallet so that they can transfer funds. So whether that's the executive of your estate, the attorney that's drafting your will, etc., that's up to date, and that there's a intention around that. So if the giver is thinking about leaving a certain percentage of their residual estate to your church, that they include cryptocurrency in that equation, and that they're very clear that the church is going to be the beneficiary of that.
So just to yes, wills, bequeaths, we can figure out how to integrate all of that.
Exactly.
We just got to provide some clarity and language. Oh, and write down passwords so that we don't end up throwing the crypto away, right?
Right.
Let me ask.
And keeping them up to date too, since presumably we're going to change our passwords occasionally.
Right. Let me ask, man, just random, but are you seeing that the folks who are most engaged in crypto, is it older folks? Is it, because there's a piece of me that once upon a time would have said, it's these crazy teenagers kind of making up, fake money or whatever. But I'm kind of finding that it's all over the place though now. Who's the most, or where are the demographics landing in the Bitcoin conversation?
Yeah.
Or in the crypto conversation?
I think as it becomes more and more institutionally accepted, you're going to find an older and older demographic getting involved in the cryptocurrency space. But 5 years ago, it was a young person's game. But I think increasingly you're finding retirement plans, 401k plans, 403b plans, IRAs invested in cryptocurrency. So the more that is happening, the more your older congregation members, your older donors to your nonprofit are going to be engaged in this conversation. And it's there that the bequest conversation has to take place.
Okay, so I mean, then yeah, there is a younger audience, but it's for sure bleeding up into
Exactly.
our age, our parents' age, and stuff like that.
Exactly. And then
Okay.
the youngest people, like you were mentioning, our kids, this is going to be their life. I mean, my kids don't really carry money anymore. They do Venmo, right? It's all electronic.
Yeah.
I think even a charge card is going to become a thing of the past.
Oh man,
When
you're
you're
hurting my
talking
feelings now.
about when you're talking about digital currency. So we're right in the cusp of a huge digital revolution around economy and exchange of value. And we as churches and as faith-based nonprofits really need to be on the leading edge of that so that we can take advantage of the philanthropy and generosity that will come out of it.
Okay, so yeah, younger folks are for sure more involved, but it's bleeding into our older groups, and even for like leaders in ministries or in churches or universities that maybe we're serving an older demographic. The fact is that one day we won't be there, and we'll be replaced by the next people that the Lord sends, and they're likely to need opportunities to engage with crypto as well. So plan now, because we're planning for today and for the next whatever as well.
Exactly.
Wow, that man, this is kind of changing the way I'm thinking about church life and even how I engage in my own like stewardship conversations, generosity conversations,
Right.
discipling conversations around giving too. Man, really, really good stuff. I saw, Jeff, that you put liquidate the gift immediately when you get it. So one of our questions is around somebody gives to a donor advised fund and it's valued at X, right? But it sits there until they say, give it to the church.
Right.
What happens if I give crypto and it's valued at $1,000, but the money, but it sits there for like, let's say 6 months, and the crypto devalues to like $200, and then the people say, give it to the church at 200. Like, am I getting the tax break at 1,000 but giving the gift of 200? Like, what's going on here?
So you would get the tax break at whatever value that Fidelity, let's say Fidelity was your DAF advisor, supervisor, you would get the tax break as the donor at the value in which you gave the cryptocurrency. What Fidelity is going to do, though, is they're going to liquidate it immediately too, and they're going to put it into a much more stable asset so that they can maintain the value of the currency. Would there be a one-to-one exchange from what the donor could advise Fidelity to give to you based on what the donor was given a tax benefit for? I don't know. It would depend on how the market functions and how the investments would perform. But most likely, the actual gift would increase in value over time if there was any time lag between the gift given to the DAF and the DAF instructed to give it to the church.
Okay. So I probably wouldn't miss out on a ton, is what I'm hearing you say.
Not at all. In fact, I think you would benefit from it because you wouldn't be paying the 5% service fee that you would pay PayPal.
Okay. So it's not like, again, 98% is better than zero.
Exactly. Yeah.
But it wouldn't be like a drastic loss if we were to go, hey, valuation of 1,000, let's sit on it, and the church gets 90.
Right. Because Fidelity is going to liquidate it immediately and turn it into a cash asset or to an equity asset that they invest in a low risk fund, and thus maintain the value of the DAF so that the donor continues to give to them over time. You wouldn't give to Fidelity's DAF if every time you gave a gift, it lowered in value significantly. It's in their best interest to see the funds grow. And in fact, the donor could actually direct even more money to the church if he or she wanted to, based on the value of the DAF.
Got it. Okay. So let me ask you this. I want to kind of keep the conversation going. If we were going to jump into the pool of crypto, whether it's, University X, Church B, or whatever, what should we consider doing in terms of promoting it? How do we get the word out there? What do we say? I mean, like, there's a piece of me that says, man, I want to stand up and start talking about it, but I'm going to feel a little bit goofy and really underprepared about, hey, welcome to Cornerstone. You guys can give Dogecoin. Let's pray. Yeah, it's just going to be kind of weird.
Right. Well, I think you kind of embrace that weirdness, right? And you do it through multi-channel promotion. So, if you're up in front of the congregation and you're saying, "Hey, we want to share with you some exciting news. We're in the crypto game. We can now accept gifts of cryptocurrency. Many of you might have cryptocurrency, and many of you might prayerfully consider giving us those gifts. God appreciates all gifts to his church, and why not be on the cutting edge of embracing cryptocurrency? I mean, I think we're at a moment very similar to the moment that churches were at 50 years ago when they were debating whether they should take credit card gifts, right? Oh, we're going to lose something by not putting the money in the plate and going online or going to a credit card transaction. Have we? Haven't we been able to encourage generosity through that? I think we're at a similar kind of moment here. And I would counsel churches and nonprofits to embrace the change, do it robustly, do it responsibly, and do it through multi-channel promotion. So have a line on your giving site, on your website that says, XYZ Church accepts gifts of cryptocurrency. If you would like to inquire on how to do that, please click here. And it would go to a type form or some kind of response form where they could make an inquiry on how to give a gift of cryptocurrency. And then you as a church body need to follow up with that person to make sure that you can facilitate that gift. I think, if you want to embrace this robustly as a church or a nonprofit, you start messaging it on social media saying, hey, we are excited about the new ways that people are building wealth and building for their futures. And we want you to know that our church is encouraging of you to give of that wealth to further the kingdom of God. And then maybe putting in a few testimonials of people who have given with cryptocurrency, I think would encourage others to give. We always say, if you can see yourself in the giving page, you're more inclined to give. So if you have a testimony of a young person saying, I didn't think I could give to this campaign, but I had cryptocurrency and the church took it. And now, we're building our new church building and I'm excited about that. That's going to encourage others to do it. And then other forms of communication, your newsletters, I would suggest even a targeted appeal, even a direct mail appeal to just announce to the church that this is something, or to your donor base as a nonprofit, that this is something that you're willing to accept now, and that it's just another option for people to be generous. That's the real way I would approach it, is that, God asks of us to be generous with all things, our time, our talents, our treasure. This is a new treasure that we have, and we can invite our members of our congregation to be generous accordingly.
So one of the things that I'm thinking for my church is just kind of listening to some of the thoughts you've got is on our page, we could, say, hey, we'd love to have a conversation with you about opening up a donor advice fund. And then you can give it that way through our denominational foundation, Fidelity, NCF, pick your favorite place that does it. The other option could be, we open up a PayPal account.
Yep.
And click here and PayPal will take it, give it. Obviously they take a piece, but I mean, both of them are quick. Both of them are clean. So it's really not too complicated to start receiving them fairly quick. The other thing that comes to mind as you're saying this is, like, it's a new form of treasure. I think that's really good language. I know that during COVID, so obviously churches closed left and right, and everybody was like, oh my gosh, what do we do? Instantly, everybody was like, thank God for online giving. Right. Thank God for text giving, right?
Right.
I mean, people were like praising the different software that exists. And for many churches, that was actually like a new treasure in that moment. One of the things that I saw that was really it was weird to me to see it at first, but it was like, that's pretty slick. I mean, churches had text to give, online giving, but I saw a bunch of churches going Venmo, Cash App, Zelle, and it's like just transfer it simply that way. And I
Right.
was like, holy cow, how come like I don't give that way, which is why I don't think that.
Correct.
But it caused me to believe, and again, this is using your language, new treasure, to cultivate donors in the future. And this I think is for like churches that are trying to engage our existing world and then the new world that's coming. Engaging new donors, you've got to engage, like you ask them to give the way that they naturally give, not the way that I prefer them to give. And what I'm
Right.
seeing is, man, I pay my friends, like I don't pay them, but it's like, hey, buy me tickets, Zelle, Venmo, Cash App, text to give. Crypto is functionally one of those other options. I don't use it, therefore I don't think it's for me or for anybody. But the fact is, just because I don't use it, it doesn't mean that it doesn't apply.
Exactly.
And so it's kind of making me think, one thing is to talk about giving, but if it's hard, if we make it difficult for people to give, they won't. My kids and their kids, man, it hurts me to think that they're not even going to use plastic, right? That they're going to give through crypto or they're going to give through whatever. Man, that's pretty incredible, man, because it's a new way of giving a new gift, but it's not a new way of being obedient. It's a new means by which we execute that obedience,
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay, I have a couple of questions before we keep going. I
Okay.
want to make sure that we answer some of these. So if we're responding to somebody who's interested in giving crypto, yes, we can encourage them to get a donor advised fund, or we can set up a PayPal account through our church and make sure that that goes that way. Venmo, PayPal, Zelle, these are all different kinds of ways that people can give, but other organizations or entities that take crypto, like PayPal, PayPal is one that does the automatic translation. Are there any other groups or any other crypto conversion groups that you would advise? I know you've mentioned Coinbase already.
Right. I would just recommend you doing your research and Googling reviews of sites to see, if they're credible or not. Coinbase is the I would say the standard for wallets, but there are others out there. PayPal, I would say would be the standard for donation conversion straight through the giving channel. But my sense is that in another 6 months, we're going to see a lot more. PayPal was kind of the first to jump into this space. My guess is that you're going to see Apple Pay and some other pay site services starting to do this as well. You need to be very careful when you're looking at cash apps to make sure that they can accommodate a charitable gift. There's been a problem with Venmo, for example, because Venmo was an app designed really for, like you say, a transaction. You go to a baseball game, your buddy bought the tickets, you're just going to Venmo him the cost of what your ticket was. Their ability to handle a charitable gift like that has been a question mark for some. So I would just, in doing your research as a church or as a nonprofit around what platforms you want to use, I think you should really look and see that they're able to take on a charitable gift and accommodate it accordingly.
So let me ask, does PayPal do that? Does
Yeah,
PayPal provide?
PayPal will, and because PayPal has been accepting charitable gifts for a number of years now for charities. But I would inquire the organization that you're looking at about whether they're able to do that. And the advantage of going with a giving block is that they're all set up for that and they're pre-established in that regard. They know they are for a charity. I mean, they are the blockchain for charitable giving for cryptocurrency. And so you pay a premium for that work that they've done in advance of setting that all up. but you can rest assured that the donations are legitimate and are going to be acknowledged accordingly.
Okay, man, that's really good to know. So website, social media platforms, any other forms of communication that you want to highlight that we might want to consider?
Yeah, I think I'm really right now very high on video testimonies, and it's not high tech, right? It's your iPhone and getting someone to give a 30-second testimony about how they were able to do it and why they did it. And posting those in social media, maybe embedded in your giving page on your website. I think highlighting that in any kind of email communications you have with your constituents, just as an example. Another example of generous giving. It would be really effective because, again, people want to see others do it, and that gives them the idea that, oh, I could do that. This is a way I could really transform, the context of my giving. I think it should be in a pledge form if you're doing a campaign for a church.
Wow, that's crazy.
Part of your annual stewardship pledge. You should give that option. I mean, we give credit card options. Why not cryptocurrency options? Again, to your point, Dave, think about the ways people want to give, not the way you typically give, as a kind of a lens through which you see the way you're communicating with your giving base. Oh,
that's
one other example that's really interesting, and I think could be transformative to the way we think about mission. I know of one church that I worked with briefly around this issue, has set up wallets actually with their international mission organizations. It's an easier way and a more cost-effective way to transfer funds than it would be through normal wire and exchange. It retains the value of the currency better because you're not paying for the exchange rate between US dollars and whatever exchange rate where the mission organization's in. And sorry to say this, but the US has been behind in their adoption of cryptocurrency. The international world is far ahead in terms of its acceptance. Cash apps, I mean, you go to Africa and most people don't traditionally bank in Africa. They use cash apps, they use online banking, and they adopted that long before the US constituency did. And so they're much more comfortable accepting electronic currency, cryptocurrency, than we might feel. So communicating with our international partners on this level is, I think, extraordinarily effective and actually cost effective in terms of getting the funds to them in a timely way, a secure way, and a way that you're not paying the kind of fees that you do through normal wire transactions and currency conversions.
Okay. Listen, so those are things that just rock in my mind, just, okay. It's an easier way to get, because I have family, right, that lives abroad in other countries that they operate under different currency. I have friends who do ministry in other places. And so we send them money a certain way, like we can actually send them more money or more safely send them more money. Listen, this is a game changer for our opportunity to be involved abroad as well. One of the questions that I'm seeing kind of just pop up, and we want to spend some time now just addressing some questions. In terms of volatility, obviously we know that crypto goes up like a roller coaster, and it can come down as quick as a roller coaster. Do you get a sense that it's going to affect, that it might cause inflation or it might devalue existing currencies if people try to move too quickly to liquidize and stabilize the asset? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's unclear, I think, and no one really knows. If you had asked people 5 years ago whether Bitcoin would be worth, $65,000, they would have laughed at you because, it was worth $300, $400. I think they would have laughed at you a year ago when it was worth about $8,000 to $9,000 a coin. It's gone up exponentially just in the last year. So that volatility is there, but it's come off of its peak in April, almost by 50%. So most projections that I'm reading by economists suggest that $100,000 for a Bitcoin could be a reality in the next 2 to 3 years. So most economists believe that as the coin is being adopted more and more as a currency, as a medium of exchange, then it will stabilize more, and that regulation, that normalcy of it will increase its value over time, just like stocks have increased. So most economists that I'm reading suggest that once there's that stabilization in the market of cryptocurrency, it will behave similarly to an equity asset. There'll be periods of increase and decrease, but overall, there will be increase over time and appreciation. But because of that volatility, that's the reason why churches and nonprofits shouldn't be holders of Bitcoin or any other cryptocurrency for a long period of time. You should liquidate it. Don't try to play the market. Take it when you get it so that you can use it for God's kingdom. Even if you put that cash into equities, into your endowment for future use, it's safer there in terms of its long-term appreciation than it would be in a volatile situation. But particularly if you are using this money for a capital campaign and need these resources for a building project or program cost, you don't want to subject that gift to the volatility of this market. So liquidate those assets quickly.
Okay. So I just want to make sure if somebody makes a crypto gift to us, don't sit on it as crypto. Exchange it as quick as you can and get the dollar amount or whatever currency you're operating in, and use that in today's value. It could go up, could go down, but if you sit on it, it's likely to go up or down, and we're not sure on the extremes of that.
Right. And that's the same recommendation we give for a stock gift too. Use it now. If you pour some of it into an endowment, that will be reinvested in equities for the long term, but use the gift as it's intended now.
Okay. So let me ask, because as folks are considering making gifts, there's people like me on the outside, maybe a little bit leery, because I don't understand this thing. I kind of get the market, it's attached to this, it's attached to that. And so it's kind of regulated. This is completely decentralized altogether. So how does this thing go up and down in value? Like, what are the different things that actually affect crypto? Because it seems to be like, that's the big question mark. And there's different ideas, man. I'd love to know your thoughts on this.
Right. Well, I think everyone would love to know the answer to that question, because if they knew what affected it going up or down, they would know when to invest in it. And I don't know the answer to that question, other than to say, there's some theory out there that it does track in some way the interest rates that are prevalent in the particular country in which it's in, or but it tends to transcend national borders, obviously, in its value. So that's a theory that I'm not so sure holds much water. Its rise over the last year paralleled a real shift to an online economy, something that you were mentioning earlier, Dave, when you said, churches couldn't meet in person, businesses couldn't function in person, and when you lack that in-person context, a cash economy doesn't make sense, right? Because the very basis of a cash economy is I give you the money, I hand it from my wallet to yours, physically. Even a check doesn't really make sense unless I mail it then to you. So when we started to drift more and more to an online economy and online shopping and online transactions, people not only did more of that over the last 12 months, but they've also become more accustomed to doing that. And that's I think one of the factors in the acceptance of cryptocurrency more now than ever. People are used to now comfortably doing exchange of value via the computer. And if they're able to do that online, they're more inclined to invest in online currencies, internet, digital currencies, and that's what crypto is. So I think our practice actually encourages the buy-in, and the more buy-in, the more value that we associate with that currency, and thus the higher the currency goes. I mean, Dogecoin began as a joke, and now it's worth something. Now, does everyone believe it's worth something? No. But when you only need one other person to believe it's worth something in order for it to have value.
Right. Yeah, there's a piece of me that was kind of like rewinding to the days of gold.
Yeah.
And then we started to print bills because, walking around with a block of gold is just really impractical,
Exactly.
And so everybody was like, yeah, that bill represents X amount of gold, and at some point, like we all know this, there's more paper print than there is gold anywhere, but we've all come to accept that that paper is representative of X, not of gold so much, but the idea of it has value.
Right.
And so it seems like, or it feels like to me, that's the approach that whether I like it or not, we're trending in that direction as it pertains to crypto, that this represents value that people have attributed to it in this kind of currency. It's just different. And so I don't like it because I don't like different, or it's weird, whatever. But really, we've kind of come full circle to gold, except today our gold is like a green dollar bill tender. And functionally, the crypto is going to become the new bill, or it could become.
Exactly.
Awesome, man. Okay, so Jeff, I've heard a lot of different things in our time today, and I think we're coming down to a close soon. I've heard there's different types of currencies out there. It's going up, it's going down. Churches, nonprofits, universities are more than able to receive them through the establishing of a donor advised fund, or through setting up something through PayPal or something like that. There's different ways for people to give it. Crypto converter type things like InGiven, Coinbase is a few. So the opportunity is there. It's a new way of giving treasure. We are early in the process. Historically, we tend to be the last ones to jump into the boat. We have a really unique opportunity to be ahead of the curve this time. I think COVID may have fast forwarded that for many of us.
Yep.
And so different ways to think about it, like how do we integrate it into our, like within church world, regular giving, capital campaigns, stewardship initiatives, both at the university level, at a church level, like are we creating spaces for people to do this? And as we start to think through like developing new donors and new generation donors, like this is how they give, therefore we have to think, how do they give, not how do I want to be given to. And crypto kind of serves as a place where that can happen. Listen, before we wrap up, that's kind of like my 50,000 foot view summary. Jeff, I want to give you the last word. For our churches that are listening, for the nonprofits and the university leaders out there, man, last 30 seconds, tell us, what are your thoughts?
I would say do your homework, but embrace this change. Try to figure out as much as you can that would work well for your context and your donor base or your congregation, but to think critically about making the ways that people can give and the modes in which they can give as broad and as generous as possible, and not to impose upon your own ways of giving on that equation. And when you make it that generously and that robustly, you're going to get more generosity, and you're going to engage donors who might not have been engaged otherwise. And that's the whole point, is to invite every one of God's people to give generously to God's mission. And that's going to be extremely crucial, I think, in the days to come, as these younger donors become older donors someday, and will be the future of giving for the church and for our faith-based nonprofits.
Man, that's such a good word, Jeff. Thank you so much for letting me peek into your brain and trying to just get a sense as to who you are and how you think and how you function, man. I'm not sure for all of our friends out there, but man, what an incredible time. Very informative. Really appreciate it. And Christy, thanks so much for putting this together and letting us be a part of it.
Gosh, guys, that was amazing. I missed changing some of the slides because I was just sitting here like staring at the both of you listening. So Dave, on the side, thank you for texting me and being like, hey girl. But anyways, thank you both. Thank you to everyone who has hung out with us for the last 75 minutes. This was incredibly informative and probably the best way I've heard about cryptocurrency and have been able to just grasp it much better. So thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Dave. Like I said, tomorrow, everyone will receive a recording of this session. And you know, this conversation goes on. Like it's ever evolving, it's ever changing. So Dave, Jeff, and the rest of the Generis team, we're here to serve you as you navigate this, as you navigate generosity, and just like, you know, like crypto, generosity is ever changing. So if there's any way that we can serve you, you can reach all of us at generis.com. Get started. I'm going to drop some links in the chat now so that you can connect with Generis, you can connect with Jeff, you can connect with Dave. Not me, although I'm pretty sure I'm in everybody's inboxes quite often. And please sign up for the rest of our workshop series. We have 3 more workshops lined up. The next one, I believe, is July 14th, and that is going to be with Jim Shepard and Julie Bullock, and they're going to talk about how to communicate with all types of givers, because there's not just one type of giver in your church. So it's going to be a great session. And we have a great lineup of upcoming virtual events. The Total Advancement Solutions team is launching a workshop series. So if your church has a nonprofit arm, you're going to want them to sign up, as well as Culture Conference and just a bunch of other great conversations we have going on. So I'm going to drop that in the chat now. And again, guys, thank you so much. This was great. All right, guys. Thank you.
Bye-bye.